Welcome to the Draft Deeper podcast on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. I am thrilled to be back with you guys. My name is Nathan Grubel. I'm the host of Draft Deeper. Thank you so much for not only tuning into every episode that we have on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed, but also for listening last week to Draft Deeper, because I was not present. I was out, but because I have the two best co-hosts that I could ever ask for, they carried the show. Did a phenomenal job, by the way. I listened to that international episode very shortly after it was published. They did an excellent job with that. If you missed that show where they covered Victor Wembanyama, Ryan Rupert, James Nagy, all the fun international prospects, some of whom we're going to be talking about tonight, go back and listen to that episode. If you missed any of the other episodes on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed last week, go back and listen to all of them, because trust me, the coverage is rolling. We're having an excellent time as a No Ceilings collective. And now we're in the meat and potatoes of draft season, boys. We are here. The first week of college hoops is under our belts. Now we're heading into the Champions Classic, which I'm incredibly excited for that event. I know you guys are as well. If any of our audience is not aware, we will be streaming those games in our playback room. That's right. You can click on the link that we will have in our podcast bio. We'll be sharing the links out on social media as well to our No Ceilings NBA playback room. Come watch the Champions Classic with us Tuesday night. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll have rooms open for both games, rotating through who's covering each game. So please make sure you're hopping on, talking with us, Scouting Live. Scouting Live. It's something we're brand new. We're doing this year. We've already had some fun doing it for the few games that we've already streamed. So definitely make sure you join us. But that's enough of an intro. We have to dive in because we have it's going to be a long one. I'm not going to lie. This is going to be a long one. This is our first Draft Deeper mock draft 1.0 on the year, but we have a twist. So normally when you hear a mock draft on a podcast show or you're watching a video on YouTube, there's a set order for things. We're not worried about the pool of players that's necessarily involved. What we wanted to do, though, is because this is our quote-unquote last preview show before we really get into how the show is going to be formatted from here on out, we didn't have time to do a separate big board episode and a separate mock draft episode. So I was sitting here one day and I thought, how can we combine both of those exercises into one show? So what I did was I took my big board, my preseason big board. I took Stephen Gillespie's preseason big board. I took Maxwell Baumbach's preseason big board, and we threw them all together into a composite board, very similar to what we do at NoCeilingsNBA.com. And we determined our composite top 30, which is going to be our pool of players we will be drafting from for this exercise. The other fun wrinkle we threw into this, which is it's going to get a little insane when we actually start this mock draft here, but we did do a tankathon sim for the lottery order. So we're not just going in order for the standings. So you can imagine a crazy team probably won the number one pick. That's always how these stupid sims go. And yeah, there's quite the surprise with the number one overall pick. But those are some of the twists and turns we are adapting into our mock draft 1.0. And I'm excited to kick this podcast off. Steven, you look like you're ready to go. Thank you so much for filling into the editor's chair for the normal producer, Kevin Black. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. If I can coin a phrase, this will be our Mockposite show today. Can we do that? Can we do a little word mash?
Mockposite 1.0. I love it.
There we go. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Shout out to the man, Kevin Black, who had some stuff happen to him at a wedding. I don't know the full
He was at a wedding.
It is such a vague thing to just throw out to the general public that we don't even know if he wants to share. And we're like, hold on, guys.
Yeah, poor Kevin was dealing with a few things at a wedding last night. Don't worry, he's okay. Nothing embarrassing happened because of him, but he was dealing with a few things. But he'll be all right. He's recovering.
But shout out to Kevin. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be with both of you guys. Shout out to my incredible friends that are letting me borrow a room during my home displacement while my house is being renovated. I got a lot to be thankful for. And of course, I'm thankful and happy to be on the show with you fine gentlemen tonight.
Maxwell, I know that you're ready to kick this thing off because while I have the number 1 pick in our mock and Steven has the number 2 pick in our mock, you have the 3rd pick in our mock, and then we will rotate through.
It's really the first pick.
It is the real first pick. It's where it gets interesting.
That's exactly right.
Every draft has that point where it starts to get interesting, and so far it looks like that's the number 3 spot. And I might even deviate from my own board. We'll see.
Oh, I expect you to just bring some awesome and unexpected name out of your hat for that 3rd pick, because that's what you do, Maxwell. You always introduce
out of the
us to
approved
new
list
players.
of 30.
Yeah, it's an approved list. Yeah, I can't go too deep cut.
That is true, but you
no
are
Kevin
always
Harmon going number 3, but
ooh, nice.
Maxwell is the absolute best at just throwing names into the wind in our No Ceilings group chat, being like, I think this might be a guy. And then 5 of us respond back, Maxwell, we don't know who that guy is. And then you kind of just like laugh there maniacally, probably while you're reading the messages. But nevertheless,
it's like, this ain't even a real person. They just believe me.
That Kevin, by the way, the name I threw out also not a real guy. Not a real guy.
Oh,
this is a name I made up.
Boom.
So I did keep you on your toes there. There was a guy I was thinking of, and I got his name wrong. So if I can't remember his name, I'm going to be honest. I'm not taking him 3rd overall. Just too big of a stretch for me to take a guy whose name I don't remember with the 3rd pick. But
thank God.
I'm excited for this one though. I'm excited. The order that we got is fascinating, and I'm excited to get into that too, because it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, when I ran this sim, I messaged the guys, should we do this again? Like, should I just run a second sim? And Steven was like, no, we're just going to roll with it. Like, we're having fun. It's mock draft 1.0. No one's going to remember this months from now. So it is what it is. So the number 1 overall pick, Mockposite 1.0, the number 1 overall pick in this exercise, I'm making the pick for who else? The Golden State Warriors. Of course, the Golden State Warriors win the number 1 overall pick in this damn exercise. I'm over it at this point. If the Warriors somehow stayed this bad over the course of the year, they are in the standings. They are not the worst team in the league. They would not have the worst odds, but they're down there. They're 5-7 right now, which is certainly below the sort of expectations that we would have for a team that just won the title last year, who didn't really make any poor changes to their roster. So they're bringing basically the same team back. There are a myriad of reasons why they could be struggling right now, but we are not an NBA podcast, unless we're talking about the young guys. There will be times where we throw out some rookie and sophomore talk, but I am not doing a deep dive into why the Golden State Warriors are where they are in the standings. We're just going to make the pick, and it's an easy one to make. It's Victor Wembanyama. I don't have to do a deep dive into why the pick would be Victor Wembanyama. It's more so it's laughable if Steph Curry, Klay Thompson could be paired up with somebody like Victor, who, listen, there was once upon a time when Boogie Cousins was doing his little stint with the Warriors, and he was like the big splash mountain before Brooke Lopez ended up getting that name with the Milwaukee Bucks. But he was like the 3rd splash brother that they all were talking about. And Victor Wembanyama would actually be that 3rd splash brother, that legitimate shot creator next to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, the type of actions they could run off of him. I don't want to go into more detail. I get sick. I'm sick to my stomach that this actually happened. But Victor Wembanyama to the Golden State Warriors. There's nothing really else to discuss there. Steven, you are on the clock with the Charlotte Hornets. I know that you're happy that Victor's off the board because you're number 1 player on your personal big board. He's still there, but the Hornets have LaMelo Ball. So does that change where you're going with number 2?
Yeah, quite a pickle I'm in here. So with Charlotte, they're losing Kelly Oubre and Mason Plumlee and Jalen McDaniels and Dennis Smith Jr. to free agency. PJ Washington and Nick Richards are in restricted free agency. I put under their team needs was just talent, right? And so they have LaMelo Ball, but you could have worse problems than having Scoot Henderson and LaMelo Ball on a team together, right? Especially with the defense that Scoot is going to bring that LaMelo lacks. They both can spread the floor. LaMelo has shown that he can shoot. Scoot's developing into a shooter, so he will actually get some clean looks too, playing alongside LaMelo Ball and literally whoever else is on the team. Mark, Williams is doing good in free agency. I saw, McGowan's, your guy Nathan, had a good showing
Bryce
in the
McGowan's
G.
showing up in the G League. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, there might be some young players growing up here on this team. And one thing about Scoot that we know is that he makes everybody on the team better, whether he's holding the scoring output or he's just casually dishing out 16 assists right after, Metcalf just wrote a piece featuring his playmaking ability. So really happy that Scoot's available. I'm sure that any team that has a second pick will say, well, he was our number one guy anyway. I'm going to go ahead and say it because I actually mean it.
What he's doing for that Ignite team right now, you referenced the 16 assist game that he just had. Listen, when we talked about Scoot on this podcast, I called him Chris Paul 2.0. Steven was immediately jumping into the fray to say, yes, I agree with you. I see a lot of the same similarities. Maxwell certainly had nothing but glowing things to say about Scoot Henderson. That comp, to me, is really evident. If you haven't watched Scoot play, anybody out there listening to this podcast, if you haven't watched him play in some of Ignite's first opening games, watch how he's manipulating screens. Watch how he's coming off screens, playing tight off the roll man, then coming off, using the right angles to be able to either hit the guy when he slips, pull up into that mid-range shot. He looks like Chris Paul out there. He really, really, a lot of those similarities are striking. I love watching Scoot Henderson play basketball every single night that I can. So it does not surprise me that Scoot would go number 2 to Charlotte. And Steven, the Charlotte team just sucks. I'm sorry. We said it preseason. Yeah. They are just not a good basketball team. They actually would benefit from jumping up into the lottery to get somebody like Victor or Scoot. It is an easy pick to make despite LaMelo Ball being there. I agree. Maxwell.
Yeah.
Number 3. We talked about it. This is where the draft begins, right? The Brooklyn Nets. This part of it hurts though. Via the Philadelphia 76ers. That part. Mm-hmm. I mean, if the 76ers still had their pick and we were talking about Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and Prospect X, that would be a lot more fun than surrendering that pick to Brooklyn. But nevertheless, somebody's got to make that pick for him, and you're going to do it.
Yeah, and historically, I can't think of a single instance where the 76ers traded a pick that was the third pick that ended up making us all really sad in hindsight. Can't think of a single time in the last 6 years or so where that's happened and just been a real
some
punch
arbitrary amount of time.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I thought about veering from my board with this pick, but the more I think about it, like in this hypothetical, if we're in a situation where the Brooklyn Nets are picking in the lottery, it's just another year where everything's gone wrong in that case. And you could still argue that everything's gone wrong, even if, they're not a true title contender this season, because that's what this team was put there to do. It feels like the thread is being tugged on this sweater, and I just don't think this current roster construction is long for this world. So if I'm picking third, I don't really worry about fit. I don't worry about the fact that I have somebody else who is a good defender that struggles to shoot from the outside, to say the least. And I just take Amen Thompson. I take him. Whoa. I don't worry about the roster fit.
Thompson is off the board. Okay.
If I'm picking in this spot, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the stars I have are not going to be here for very long. We need talent. We need to raise our ceiling going forward. And I'm taking the biggest swing I can. I think he's the highest upside guy on the board. I love how he guards 1 through 3. He is extremely creative. There are times he can be a little frustrating. He's got to get stronger, both in terms of getting to his spots when he tries to attack the rim and finishing at the rim as well. He'll take angles at the basket to avoid contact, and that's got to change. The outside shot, I've voiced my displeasure with on this podcast, and the fact that it didn't clean up over the summer. But still, at the end of the day, I think if you build that jumper from the ground up and he starts to hit it, and then you just put in how creative NBA teams have shown themselves to be when it comes to players where, the fit on paper isn't the clearest. Like Zion Williamson, prime example. There was a lot of well, what's he going to look like in the NBA? How is this going to work? The Pelicans figured it out. I think you bank on NBA coaching staffs being able to figure guys out. I think you do that with Amen Thompson here as well.
Is the fit that poor, though? Because there's two things
They
that
need
stand out to me.
defenders. They need long guys that play defense because right now every guard they have is 6'1" and doesn't like to guard anybody.
They need long defenders at the point of attack. That's
Mhm.
Yep, that's the number one thing. The number two thing, again, we're not an NBA podcast, but if we have to pontificate, if Kyrie Irving is out the door and he does not return to Brooklyn, the team needs a point guard. And for all that we want to talk about Thompson's struggles with shooting the outside shot, the best version of him is as a quote unquote lead ball handler. So somebody needs those reps in Brooklyn to help take over that offense and get everybody else into the spots where they need to be. Somebody needs to be the lead ball handler on that team. Amen Thompson would certainly get the chance to do that if he comes into Brooklyn and if Kyrie is in fact on his way out the door. So for those two reasons, they need defense at the point of attack. They need playmaking. Amen Thompson, I think, is a good fit. So job well done, Maxwell. I do like that you stuck to your guns and went with that pick. All right. I'm back on the clock. Sacramento Kings, the 4th overall pick in this mock draft exercise. Funny, they just drafted number 4 last year. They got, I would call Keegan Murray a pretty good basketball player. So I think that has worked out for them. Let's see if it can work out again. So they have some interesting guard depth, but I do think they could take another player at the shooting guard spot. They do need a little bit of wing depth, and they need a little bit of center depth, depending on how you feel about Domantas Sabonis playing the center. If you like Neemias Keita, if you're still a Rashawn Holmes kind of guy, there are some different ways I could go. I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off. We're going Keontae George at 4th overall.
Whoa,
and that is
all right.
Yeah, that differs from where I was on Mr. George a week ago. But I said at the top, this was our quote unquote last preseason podcast, right? Or our last preview podcast. We're cheating a little bit. We do have 2 games under our belt that we could review the film. Keontae George did not shoot the ball well for Baylor in game 1, but I was impressed with everything else he did on the floor. And a lot of those things also carried over into game 2, where he did shoot the cover off the ball. He did score 23 points. He was effective from 3-point range, but the passing ability, the lightning quick decision-making, the commitment to playing defense and not just guarding other guards, but really guarding wherever he needs to on the floor, bodying guys up, guys bouncing off of him as they're driving at him playing with quick, active hands on the defensive end, him being a threat in transition. Really, no matter what the Baylor Bears have needed him to do to contribute to the team, he's done it. And that was one of the burning questions that I wrote about in my Morning Dunk column last week was I went into, is Keontae George going to be the type of player who just fits in with his team, right? We know how much of a scoring, or should I say shooting maestro, this guy was in high school. We knew that he was going to be a score first, shoot first guard. Would he be able to blend in and do all of the other things to help his team win games because there were a number of guards ahead of him? The answer to that is a resounding yes. And I think the Sacramento Kings just need to keep acquiring players who fit that mold. They have another perfect example of that in Keegan Murray. We see De'Aaron Fox playing really well. We know Domantas Sabonis wants to play the game the right way. Regardless of some of the other guards on the roster, just go get a guy who wants to fit in and blend in with that culture that they're currently trying to build there. Someone who wants to play the game the right way with the type of scoring upside we know that Keontae George has. So give me that man at number 4. There are some people out there saying you shouldn't take a guard like him with a top 5 pick. Well, I say screw that notion to all the naysayers. I just did it. So we'll move on. Steven, you have the 5th pick. You're up with the Houston Rockets. Now that I took George, there are a fascinating number of directions you could go.
Yeah, and it's really weird. I have a guy who I have ranked 3rd on my board, who at one point I was entertaining being 2nd on my board. I just don't, and I know, like, especially with a team like the Houston Rockets, you got to take talent because they need talent all over the place. But I really do feel like their 4s are like, they have enough kind of like 3-4 tweener guys on the team that they're going to be invested in, that they're going to be wanting to continue to improve. So I think that there's not a big man worth taking here. They need to go for more of like a 2 guy, although that you got Jalen and you've got, Porter on this team. I'm going to go ahead and take Dariq Whitehead here. We haven't seen him play any college ball yet. I just think that their 4s and their 3s are crowded right now, like with Tari Eason, with Jabari Smith Jr., with, Alperen Şengün, and Usman, right? Like they have guys on the team that are taking up the spot. I think that Dariq Whitehead playing the 2 and the 3, depending on the lineup, where you can have him out there with KPJ and also Jalen Green, I think it helps the team out a lot. He looks like he's going to be a good defender, or at least an average one, but that slashing ability, that shooting ability, and the kind of ancillary playmaking that he can bring this team, I think it could help him out a lot. So I am going to go with Dariq Whitehead here.
I think he's a potential star waiting in the wings at Duke. And yeah, we understand we haven't seen him play any games yet, but I think when he does come back, give him a few games to get his legs underneath him. And then once he's really back into the swing of things, I think he's going to be that legitimate number 1 scoring option for Duke. That would be why he's the 3rd overall player on my personal big board right now. I know I didn't take him with that 4th pick. I wanted to more so write a love letter to what Keontae George has shown me this year, but I cannot fault Steven for taking Dariq Whitehead. I do think personally that was the right pick for him to make. So job well done for me on that one. Maxwell, you're up. You have the 6th pick, which, again, sad face to Lakers fans out there. For all the sad faces we issued to 76ers fans, the Lakers are in the same place. They have their pick. It's actually a swap with the New Orleans Pelicans. So now New Orleans gets to make a 6th pick with one of the deepest, most talented rosters already in the NBA. Now we're just going to throw another lottery pick in there. Where are you going for New Orleans with number 6?
Yeah, so this is a really, really talented team. And I kind of want to get funky with this pick. So this is the number 5 guy on my board. The number 4 is still sitting there.
Okay.
But I want to dip down to number 5 because I think just what this opens up for this team is so fun. I'm taking Brandon Miller from
Okay. Let's go.
Spot. So Brandon Miller, 6'9". The EYBL tape on him, I didn't really get it at first. I was like, all right, this guy's like big. He's 6'9". He can score in the mid range. Like the defense like comes and goes, but like when it's there, it's really good. And then I watched the high school film of him, and like weirdly, the high school film is like probably worse, but it's what made it click for me. Where he played on this high school team where like the next tallest guy felt like he was like 6'4", and he had to play center on defense and point guard on offense, and he's getting triple teamed, and like you truly saw what he could do as a passer and a decision maker. That there's sort of this on-ball guard type upside, and so far he's made all 8 of the free throws he's taken. He's taken a lot of threes. He's taken some deep threes and he's hit them. So he could potentially be this 6'9" player that can defend a multitude of positions and offer some real versatility in terms of what he does. He's also a willing screener. Like there's some short roll stuff you can do with this guy. You can do some nasty stuff off of handoffs with this guy. I'm highly intrigued by him. And I think if you roll out a lineup that's like him, Dyson Daniels in a couple years, I'm still a big believer in Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and take your pick of Trey Murphy or Herb Jones. Like you can do some nasty stuff with this team.
Yeah.
And I can't pass up the fit. I think the idea of what he can become on the ball as he continues to grow and become more confident in that outside shot, and the earlier turns look good. I know I'm a big Cam Whitmore guy, but just the versatility of Brandon Miller in this particular circumstance gets me so worked up that I would take a guy who I think may potentially have a slightly lower ceiling, and I'm not even sure about that. I just lean Brandon Miller here.
What was the number one thing that stood out to you when you were reviewing the tape from his first 2 early games? Because I know that people can talk about the offense. Maybe
the
it
defense
was some of the
was
offense.
unreal. Yeah.
Thank you.
He talks so much, and like he is a floor general on that side of the ball. I posted the clip. I sent it to our group chat immediately when it happened because I was cracking up. where him and Mark Sears, they're supposed to switch, and Sears is like not switching. So Brandon Miller shoves him into position, and then Sears still gets back cut like 2 seconds later. But yeah, just his ability to communicate on that end, his hands on that end of the floor, his feet are great. And I just think his like physical tenacity gets a little overlooked because he's not like a super bricked up guy, but he's really willing to engage physically. That I think it bodes well for him guarding up and how he can use his chest to wall players off on defense as well. Like the defense is really good there.
So yeah, and it was going back to exactly what you laid out on the preseason pod, him being used at center in high school. And a lot of those fundamentals, they're translating beautifully into college basketball. He is so disciplined on that end. That's what really blew me away. You talked about a lot of the other big men stuff, like being able to set screens, the short roll game, the pop out game. We're seeing that already. And oh, by the way, he's also bringing the ball up the floor, initiating the offense for Alabama, getting them in the sets. The creativity aspect to Brandon Miller's game. Again, I personally wasn't blown away by anything he was doing offensively. I mean, he's had some good games. I think some of the shots he's hit are nice. But yeah, it was the defensive stuff that really stood out to me. And you throw in some of those fundamentals that we talked about at that center spot, that Pelicans team, now you can play this really funky, small defensive first lineup with like him and like Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels and Alvarado, like all these guys out on the floor together. I just love NBA teams that can deploy different lineups depending on what they need, and the versatility that the Pelicans have on their roster it's insane, and it could get even more insane with Brandon Miller in the fold. So.
And not to mention too that he could be an offensive boost too. Like we're singing praises on his defense, but there's some scary offensive upside for this guy too. And the fact that CJ McCollum is waning down. We'll see what happens with Zion and Brandon and how they figure that stuff out. But they can get like another real offensive punch that's just insane.
I agree. Brandon Miller, intriguing pick to the New Orleans Pelicans at number 6. So I'm back on the clock. The Detroit Pistons are up with the 7th overall pick. I cannot let this man slide anymore. I'm going to take Cam Whitmore. And Cam was one of the guys that was certainly high on my preseason board, even before we were doing summer evaluations. I was talking about him on social media last year. Like, make sure you're watching out for Cam Whitmore, the McDonald's games, etc. I love this guy. He is a physical specimen. He's a 6'7" combo forward. And I wrote down, what do the Detroit Pistons need outside of a little bit of wing depth? They need a defensive-minded combo forward. And I think that's exactly what Cam Whitmore would give them with scoring upside. Certainly when he gets downhill, he's getting much better in the mid-post. He has that low mid-range pull-up game. If he extends that shot out beyond 3, holy smokes, look out, because I think he makes a lot of the right decisions on the offensive end. He can guard 2 through 4 in the NBA. Give me Cam Whitmore to slot right in with the Detroit Pistons. Give them a different look that they don't really have right now at the 3 or the 4. Saddiq Bey, he's one of the better shooters in the NBA, but he's not that athletic type of forward. Bojan Bogdanovic, again, another one of these awesome combo forward shooters, but he's not the defensive type of player that Cam Whitmore can be. So we'll just give them another fun tool in the toolbox. So Cam Whitmore, I think, would be a good fit there. Steven, you're back up. The Orlando Magic with pick number 8. Talk about funky teams. We talked about the Pelicans, but the Orlando Magic are trying out even funkier lines. They got like Point Franz going now. They got like Bol playing the 3. What are you going to do to this team with the 8th pick?
I'm interested in seeing if I could just give them another like tall, like bruising forward, but I'm going to go ahead and give them the highest guy remaining on our composite draft deeper board. I'm going to give them Nick Smith Jr. And I think that he gives them something that they don't have right now. It's kind of like take you off of the dribble, playmaking, backcourt player that would really give them – it would really just kind of complete the offensive ensemble that they have right now. Defensively, they got enough length behind them to where there's some people that are really big on the defense that Nick Smith brings at the backcourt. There's some people who are lower. I kind of fancy myself somewhere in the middle. But offensively, the stuff that he could run off of a lot of screens from this like land of giants that they have, like you can get him created on some off-ball action. He can do some pick and roll, some pick and pick and lob stuff. I mean, there's just a number of ways that Orlando could employ him. And I'm really impressed with the offensive sets that they're running already. You give them like a bursty, long, shooting, scoring guard. That's just something else that they don't have in their system right now. No disrespect to like Cole Anthony or Jalen Suggs. I was really high on both of them, and I appreciate both of their skill levels. But just to take you off the bounce, long range, interior, mixed with the defensive ability, I think that he can play well alongside Jalen or alongside Cole. But adding some guard depth on this team that's got nothing but tall creation pieces, I think that it's going to help them out tremendously here. So give me Nick Smith Jr. to Orlando.
No, I do want to evaluate Nick Smith's defense this year, Steven, really closely, because if that would come to pass, if that pick would come to pass, and he is a good defender at the guard spot using his 6'5" size, his length, on top of all the athleticism he possesses, that vertical pop that we talk about, the scoring package, the 3-level scoring package, he could be like a bigger version of what Cole Anthony kind of is for that team already. Yeah. Which, when you talk about, I was obviously a big Cole Anthony guy too myself, but if we're talking about starting guards and where the NBA is going with having plus positional size everywhere on the floor, you could slot in a bigger guard like Nick Smith alongside Jalen Suggs, and now you're talking about a more interesting backcourt. I wouldn't fault Orlando for making that pick either. So I think that was a good selection at number 8. Maxwell, you're on the board at number 9, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Little surprising to hear them at the 9 spot in a mock draft, but they listen, they've been playing well lately. They had a good game against the New York Knicks today as we're recording this podcast on Sunday the 13th. We have selected 8 of our top 9 players in our composite ranking, so we really haven't deviated too far off base. I guess I was the one who technically threw the tailspin in with Keontae George at 4, but the 9th guy out of our top 9, I'm staring right down the barrel at a perfect fit, in my opinion, with the Thunder. Are you going to go that direction?
I think I'm not. I think I'm taking the guy that I like. I think I'm taking the guy that you yelled at me for liking more than the guy that you're thinking about. I'm taking Asar Thompson with this pick.
Wow.
Look, I know Oklahoma City, there's some like lack of shooting among a lot of their star players, at least at this point in the season. They're ranked 29th in the NBA in 3-point percentage. So I know taking a guy with the questionable jump shot, it seems a little iffy. This is still a team that's in rebuilding mode. This is still a team that needs as much high-level, high-ceiling talent as they can get. And that's what Asar Thompson is. And I think if Chet Holmgren's going to be healthy, this is a guy who profiles extremely well next to him. And if not, he profiles well next to Jeremiah Robinson-Earl as a front court partner as well. But he's 6'7". He is a live wire in transition. His passing game is really impressive. He finishes with power, but he's got a lot of junk, a lot of Euro steps, things like that to get there. I've been impressed. It looks like he's added a hook shot to his game recently in the post as well. But unlike Amen Thompson, the outside shot looks quite nice for Asar at this point. It's very cleaned up. Nathan, you got to look at it a little bit, I believe.
Steven got a better look at it than I did.
Yeah,
because he was down there for
the
pro day.
But yeah, I'm buying that progression, and I just think his decision making. This is a team that, in some ways, is kind of short on athletes. Like Shea is like a walking rim touch, but like Giddey is more of like a footwork guy. Dort is more of like a big body who's going to take more, kind of easy stuff. I think just having another guy with real burst that could offer some second side creation from you from time to time really kind of livens things up. But at this stage with the Thunder, I am still just like star hunting. I'm just trying to get the highest ceiling guys. And I think this guy has a higher ceiling than the person that we have ranked ahead of him on our composite mock. Who's the guy I love? I love that guy. I've got him 9th, but I think this guy's ceiling is a little more tantalizing at this stage.
So if you're listening to this podcast, right, you've now heard Maxwell take both Thompson twins.
Yeah.
You would have thought that he was the one who took the trip down to Georgia to see the overtime elite program, and not
maybe he needed to.
Steven.
Yeah,
maybe we needed to send Maxwell. I guess.
I need you guys to send me some more intel about what I'm missing here.
Yeah, we got that wrong at No Ceilings, but no, I love the enthusiasm about both of the Thompson twins and Asor's game in particular. I mean, Maxwell, yeah, you watched the same workout tape that I did that's floating around social media lately, where he is just nailing all of these fun, creative little jump shots. And
The old workout video.
Yeah.
No, it's in game 2. He was like 3 for 6 from 3 the other day. Like it's getting there.
He is. He is. The Overtime Elite program did start their regular season. City Reapers have already had a few fun games. So no, he is doing it in game as well. But I think Maxwell had a little birdie named Corey Tulaba whispering into his ear lately about you got to move up Asar Thompson on your board. You got to take him pretty high.
I had Asar higher than this. Asar was 8 on my board. So I have not moved Asar an inch this entire time. I was the guy who was high on Asar before. When everybody else in No Ceilings was saying, this guy, I don't know about this guy. What if he can't shoot?
Before it was cool, good? Maxwell was there.
Before it was cool, I was the Asar Thompson hipster at No Ceilings.
There you go.
I'm not there yet, but I love the boldness of the pick. So the other Thompson twin, Asar, was 11th on our composite big board. So Maxwell reached down a little bit, but not too far.
Just not on my board. He was 8 on my board, though.
Okay. So 8 on Maxwell's board. So he didn't reach. In fact, by Maxwell's standards, he got some value for the Oklahoma City, which is Sam Presti. He is the king of getting value. Am I right? In all of his trades and draft picks and everything he does. So job well done in Oklahoma City. So I'm on the board with the 10th overall pick, the San Antonio Spurs. I will not pass on the man who I wanted Maxwell to take. I will draft Jarris Walker for the Spurs. Okay. Man, I'm watching these first few Houston games, guys. I'm in love. I'm in absolute love. In that first game, the shooting was not pretty. He really wasn't contributing that much in the scoring department, but everything else he did, his defensive instincts, his awareness, his verticality, his rebounding effort, his physical stature, like guys just cannot do anything with him, and they won't at the college level all year long. And if he's taking, very similar to Keontae George, that he had a poor shooting performance game 1, came out game 2 against St. Joe's, was hitting threes, hitting some outside shots, making sure that he was well taken care of in the scoring department as far as his box score stats. If that's the type of Jarris Walker we're getting all year long, boys, we have him mocked too low at number 10. I really do think he could challenge higher than that. I have him higher than that on my personal board. We talk about upside. Maxwell, I get where you're going with Asar's upside, as if he's a potential go-to scorer at the wing position in the NBA with some of his defense, with some of the passing tools. I get where you're making that upside argument. I don't know what Jarris Walker's upside is right now. I think he could have some scary, scary upside that we might not even be seeing the full extent of right now. And just the idea of bringing him into a San Antonio team that needs more physicality. We don't know what's going to happen with some of the vets on the squad. We don't know where Jakob Poeltl's going to be. We don't know where some of these other big men are going to be. We know Charles Bassey, they brought him in. He's been playing well. But you're telling me if they can play Jarris Walker at that spot instead, with some of the passing upside that he has, with some of his post-up game, if he keeps the shooting touch rolling, you're telling me they're not going to want to give him and spoon-feed him more of those minutes? I don't know, man. I like that fit in the San Antonio system, so give me Jarris Walker. Steven, you are up. This is fun. This is an interesting wrinkle in our lottery. We get the Utah Jazz making 2 straight lottery picks. I don't get to make one of those picks, but you guys do. This first pick
Maxwell,
is coming.
A little team building.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. A little team building. Let's see if you guys can play off each other in the lottery process. So this pick is via the Minnesota Timberwolves, and boy, watching them right now, they would love to have this pick. Sorry, Metcalf, but nevertheless,
take another center
pick for the Jazz. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to give him another center to play alongside Walker Kessler. Where are you going?
Yeah. So Maxwell and I we're rebuilding the Utah Jazz. I actually picked for them later on in this mock draft too. So I get 2 of the 3. Maxwell, you get to help me out. And if I'm Utah, like, it's pie in the sky right now. I can literally do whatever, and the vibes are just gonna continue to be good.
The best team in the West, Utah Jazz. How about those words?
How about it? The best team in the West, and they get a lottery pick.
They get 2 lottery picks.
Right, yeah. It's insane. Yeah. So I got Mike Conley on a partially guaranteed $24.4 million. Rudy Gay is a free agent. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is restricted free agent. Balmaro and Azubuike are on team options. I'm just going to take a swing for the fence here. I'm going to pick the player who I think has the most star potential at this spot. I'm going to dip a little bit down the board. I'm going to pick up a guy who's playing about 6-7 hours north of me, and I'm going to take GG Jackson right here.
That's a great pick.
He's young. He looks like he can do a lot. He has the right energy for this like youthful, fun, funky, like Island of Misfit Toys Utah Jazz team. Once he figures out basketball, like this kid is going to be incredible because he's just playing on pure hustle and instinct right now. Once he starts getting development and playing under a coach right now who I think is one of the best coaches in the NBA, I just think that this makes all the sense in the world. There's no pressure on him because he's going to be playing in Utah and he's not going to be starting. So I love this pick for Utah right here with GG Jackson.
You mentioned star upside, some of the things that he's already doing in 2 games for South Carolina, some of the fun pick and roll actions they're having him play out of, the pull-up jump shooting. We know about the rim running, tantalizing potential in transition, some of the passing flashes that we may very well see from GG Jackson. I know Maxwell's working on a fun GG Jackson piece for this week, so can't wait for everybody to read that one.
It's going to be so
myself
awesome.
Included. Mm-hmm. It's going to be fantastic. What's the title of that piece, Maxwell?
Oh, GG's Big Adventure. Yeah.
That's gold. That's pure gold.
That made me smile from ear to ear when you told us that. So yeah, that's a fantastic pick for you. Who, by the way, GG Jackson could be too low in this exercise.
He might be,
very well could be.
I threw out the name for a comparison preseason that I have never uttered for another prospect. I threw out the Chris Webber name for GG Jackson, and you just see how he moves on the floor, man. It's scary hours, and I can't wait to see how he continues to develop this year and beyond. Maxwell, you're up with the second Utah Jazz lottery pick. Where are you going?
Yeah, so me and Steven were team building here, and I like GG Jackson quite a bit. I picked him before he played a game just because I thought it was one of the most interesting stories in college basketball, and I just kind of wanted to see where it went, and I'm like really impressed. I think my favorite thing about GG is that in those games, he did not carry himself like he was the highest rated recruit in program history. Like he plays like he is a part of the team. And I am really enamored with what he might be able to become. So with that being said, the next highest guy on my board is a big, and I kind of just want to give GG the space to explore that studio and see what he can become. I don't want to be like a burden into him. I don't want to give him any thoughts in the back of his head about what might be going on. And I've got another guy that I rocketed up my board where we talked about, hey, are we going to edit boards or use just the preseason boards that we had when we did this episode? And I said, if I can edit my board, I just want to insert one guy.
There's
one guy I want to insert here. And look, I'm still a bit iffy on if I went way too high, if I got a little lost in the sauce of first day college basketball where low end D1 teams are just getting walloped.
Am I doing a podcast with Corey Taliba and Tyler Metcalf? Or am I doing one with Maxwell?
No, I was low on Jet. and I'm taking Jet Howard.
Here we go.
Yep.
Oh,
here's what I like about Jet Howard. I think the floor on Jet Howard is what I underestimated. So preseason where I differed from Corey and Metcalf, I did not like the in-between stuff. I didn't like his finishing at the rim. I did not like his ball handling, and I did not like his passing. I thought it was all just bog standard stuff for a prospect.
I think we all felt that way on this podcast when we talked.
We did. Yeah, for sure. I did not anticipate him to be a guy who through 2 games is averaging 4.5 assists. The feel is just like oozing out of him. I love how quick his feet are defensively. I liked that before the season. But just seeing how well it's scaled up, I didn't anticipate it to be this good out of the gate. The shot making is further along than I expected, and not just like the catch and shoot stuff. I still need to see more from him getting downhill. I need to see more at rim finishing. Like that's the stuff that could kind of bump him down. But I think you're talking about a kid who's 6'8", has the pro pedigree, has wonderful lateral athleticism, and is just a real trustworthy decision maker. Like these guys pan out. Like we always talk about size, field, defense players turning out. add in like this high level of a jump shot. And like, it's just hard for me, unless like everybody in this class really hits, to see him like falling beyond the lottery, which they might. Like we talked the other day about how nobody's really stunk so far. But I'm very enamored with Jet Howard at this point.
So Maxwell did reach down a little bit. So really, Jet Howard could have technically been higher on our composite board. I did not change my rankings from where I had him preseason. So I am the low
Nathan's
man on
not
the
a
totem
coward
pole.
like I am. That was the only one I
got
changed,
a little scared too.
fair.
He wasn't going to fall past 14.
I had him at 36 on my preseason board. So while I'm dragging him down in this composite exercise, I can assure you when we do this exercise again another month from now, I will probably have Jet Howard higher on my board to where he will be higher in these composite rankings. So it only looks like a reach because of yours truly. You're welcome, America. So and any other countries who are listening to this podcast, by the way, shout out to everywhere else in the world. That's a fun pick. I appreciate the pick. Jet Howard is definitely a Utah Jazz type of player. Maybe not just in the way that the Utah Jazz are playing right now, but really what that organization has always stood for, right? They're a draft first organization who develops prospects and brings players in to play the game of basketball the right way, very similar to how the San Antonio Spurs have run their organization for many years. So that seems like a very good pick for a franchise that rebuilding, retooling, I don't know what they're doing right now. They're just going out there having fun and winning basketball games. And Jet Howard, for what he's shown in Michigan already, I have a few words coming from him in my latest morning dunk. He's doing everything he can to contribute to winning basketball. So I do love that about him. Okay. Miami Heat, 13th overall. I'm back on the board. So for the Miami Heat, I wrote they need backcourt defense and point guard depth. They could maybe take another big man behind Bam Adebayo, depending on how you feel about Omer Yurtseven, depending on how you feel about some of the other fun combo forwards they have who are masquerading as fives. I am going to go in the backcourt, though. I'm going to go Cason Wallace out of Kentucky.
Love.
I love Cason Wallace. This guy comes out first game, damn near puts up a triple-double, right? And it wasn't just the floater touch that we knew he had. It wasn't just some of the pull-up stuff that we knew he had. It wasn't just the 94 feet style defense, which we knew he had. Some of the playmaking flashes that he showed in the second half of the game, just his willingness to get up on the boards, the defensive glass, grab that ball, go, get out on the break, get everybody else involved, not just transition opportunities for himself. Some of the stuff he was doing scoring out of the pick and roll, I loved how he was navigating some of those opportunities. What Cason's doing, he is one of the most complete guards that I think Kentucky's had in quite a while.
Yeah.
He might be underrated at this point. If he's taken at 13 overall, like to me, he seems like a top 10 guy. And Corey and Albert just did a fantastic segment on the Draft Deck. If you missed that episode this past week, they did the top 40 draft market rankings. They were talking about Cason Wallace, and they had a really funny bit they went back and forth about with Cason, where Cason's kind of like the guy who we should love as draft analysts, but we're not really loving him the same way that he's probably trying to love on us, showcasing all the parts of his game. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, there's no chase, as Albert was talking about with Corey. But yeah, Cason Wallace for me is a guy who, if he's playing behind Kyle Lowry, if he gets to learn from somebody like that, if he gets to play alongside Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and these Rough Riders that they are down in Miami, that's the type of player who I would want to bring into that organization. Give me Cason Wallace. Steven, you're making the last pick in the lottery, my friend. The New York Knicks.
New York.
There's a few names. There's a few interesting names. There's one in particular who we have not hit on in our lottery, who got a top 10 grade in our composite rankings. I'm curious, where are you going to go with that 14th pick?
Well, I wasn't expecting that name to be here. I wasn't expecting Jet Howard to already be taken. I thought I was going to shock everybody on the podcast. I was looking at Jet to go to New York because I feel like he's exactly what they need. You know, a wing that can shoot and play off of guys like Brunson and Barrett and Julius Randle. But seeing as how the wing depth is kind of in question, they need shooting. I think on the perimeter, they also need a big man, right? Because Mitchell Robinson is probably good for maybe 30 games out of a season. They're really big into Hartenstein. I love Hartenstein, but he's probably not who you want to be starting at that 5 spot long term. He's probably more of like a second or third big in your rotation type of guy.
Yep. Perfect backup.
Go ahead and give me Lively. I think that he's exactly what they need. I think that he fits this team needs to a T. Athletic big man, very promising, a rim protector, rebounder, can do a little bit on offense. I'm expecting that the shot will be able to travel eventually. It's just really interesting that he was considered the top guy in his class, and we had him like barely in the top 10 collectively at No Ceilings. On Draft Deeper, we barely have him at that level. And now on our Mockposite show, he is the last lottery pick. It's just really strange. And I just think that we need to see more of him. But I think that you can't beat the value that the Knicks are going to be getting at Derek Lively at the 14th spot.
Yeah, I have Derek Lively number 9 on my personal board. Steven, you have him at 10. Maxwell has him at 11. So we're pretty aligned with where we have him. I would agree with you. I didn't expect to see his name here as low as 14, but a lot of the
What's
other
wrong
options,
with them?
A lot of the other options though that were taken in front of him, I think we lost Maxwell, man.
We lost Maxwell.
We're gonna have to get Maxwell back.
Hey, there we are.
We got
there
him.
He is.
Yep.
Hey, we got him. He's back.
Good old internet troubles. But anyways, we wouldn't have expected Lively to be here this low in this exercise. Steven asked what's wrong with him. I don't know if there's anything wrong with him. I think because we haven't seen him play yet, that might be a reason why everyone's not eager to raise him up on their personal boards. Yeah, he's old news. He did dress the other night on Friday. He had 4 points, 2 rebounds, 2 blocks, and limited minutes.
Yeah, I watched it. I thought he looked fine. Like he didn't like jump off the page for me, but I'm with you on Lively. Like I'm still on Derek Lively Island to a degree. I watched him in person at the McDonald's game, and I was just so blown away by how big and bouncy he is. Like that dude moves like a forward.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of great athletes in this class, and a lot of people are just overlooking the fact that there's a 7'2" dude with a 7'9" wingspan that moves like he does. Like there's some weird, I don't want to say like motor issues because that sounds bad, but like there are times where it's like just take over the game, and that's kind of what I want to see from him.
Maxwell, I'm excited where you're going to go with the 15th overall pick with the Indiana Pacers, because look out, here come the Indiana Pacers, right? You have Tyrese Halliburton making an all-star push. You still have Buddy Hield and Miles Turner on the roster. It doesn't seem like the Lakers are going to be in that much of desperation mode to pluck them away from Indiana. Ben Mathurin, oh, by the way, Ben Mathurin making a strong Rookie of the Year push. If it wasn't for Paolo Banchero playing absolutely bananas down in Orlando, Ben Mathurin would probably be the favorite for the Rookie of the Year award. So many interesting, fun, young, talented pieces, and you can add another one with the 15th pick. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, so I'm picking a guy who has like not had the best start to the season. But I do think that I trust him to turn it around, and I think that this is a pick that we might look back on at the end of the season and be like, no way. Like this was a big missed call or whatever. But I'm still believing in this guy. I'm taking Arthur Kaluma from.
Hey, there we go.
I love it.
I'm still confident in him. So through 2 games, Kaluma, the outside shot isn't falling. The inside shot isn't really falling either. He's hitting his free throws, he's rebounding, he's moving well. But just some rough shooting outings so far for Kaluma. So I was really impressed with him in what I saw of his World Cup play this offseason. I think that at FIBA rather, he had some counters on the perimeter. I thought his shooting touch looked better. I thought his strength inside and finishing touch there looked better. He was using more pace, hesitation. He was playmaking better. There was more patience to his game. Defensively, I feel like the actual play is lagging a little bit behind as far as what the tools can be. But just the progress that I saw from him from freshman year of college throughout the season, that big last 10 game stretch, than what we saw in international play. And this year we're not seeing it yet, but I think we will. But he would just give them somebody with upside of the forward spots. I like the idea of Matherin and Halliburton remaining a true backcourt and playing those two guys at the guard spots, and then giving them some more athleticism and forwards around them, getting more of those big wing types that you can just play big lineups with size. That's where the league is headed. And I think Kaluma would just fit nicely in there. He's not super high maintenance, but I think that what he's showing as far as his development with his playmaking for himself is very intriguing.
We're all in on Arthur Kaluma. I'm very much also a believer in Arthur Kaluma. I think he's a great pick here at 15, was number 14 on our composite board. So you have to think, had I adjusted my board for the Jet Howard experience after week 1, we would have probably taken the top 15 players with the first 15 picks in our mock draft exercise. So I'm actually pretty happy with how this has turned out so far. We'll see if I keep the happiness going with what I'm about to do. The Orlando Magic are up via the Chicago Bulls with the 16th overall pick. I'm making this selection. So they could use a little bit of shooting guard depth. They could use a little bit more wing depth. I'm tempted to just completely throw this off the rails and say, screw it. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Baba Miller.
Let's go.
That's so on brand.
The Orlando, we just want to be on brand in Orlando, right? We want to try and make picks that we do realistically think the franchise would make. And even though we haven't seen Baba Miller, we won't see Baba Miller for half the year. At the same time, all of the tape that we all watched during the preseason internationally, man, the fun things he can do as this jumbo-sized, you can call him a wing because he can handle it in transition. He can finish at the rim on the break as much as you can have him sprint out to the corners and nail some corner threes off the break. He can do some fun things in the half court, despite that really being the part of his offensive game that needs to come along. Him actually beating guys off the bounce in the half court and making decisions off of those live dribble actions. He needs to get better at some of that stuff, but just the two-way type of potential he could bring to the table. A team that we have no idea what Jonathan Isaac's still going to do with the Orlando Magic, but when you talk about somebody who could fill in and play that sort of a role for this team, be another one of these crazy big guys you can throw out in a lineup with a Wendell Carter, a Bol, a Paolo, a Franz. You could put Baba Miller out there. He has a lot of those same ball skills to where he's not really lost in the sauce out there. So I love Baba for the Orlando Magic. I think that's a fun name to throw into the mix for another first-round pick for Orlando. So that's where I'm going. Baba Miller, number 16. Steven, because of the pick swap, you're drafting for the LA Lakers, making one of the picks where anybody listening to this podcast could boo you as much as cheer you, because that's just what the LA Lakers fan base does. They need everything. Right? I think
that's literally what I have in my team needs is everything. Everyone on their roster right now either is a restricted free agent, a free agent, or has a player option other than Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Literally everybody.
That leads me to believe you're just not that we don't go BPA in our exercise. I think our mock draft clearly shows that we're going BPA for the most part and somewhat factoring in team fit. You're definitely going BPA here. Who is the best guy in your opinion left to give to the Lakers?
I don't know if I go PPA because the two guys that we have next up on our big board, they're like side by side. And I think I'm kind of feeling the second guy a little bit more than the first guy as someone who can plug in beside Anthony Davis and LeBron James more and potentially has long-term upside to be able to have a team kind of built around him. I'm gonna go Jalen Hood-Schifino here.
Love it.
I'm gonna go Jalen Hood-Schifino for the Los Angeles Lakers.
He took Maxwell's pick. We know that he wanted to make that pick.
I know. He took Jet Howard for me to the Knicks, so it's only right that I took Jalen Hood-Schifino and put him here. Listen, we have Anthony Black. You're gonna hear the name later. He and Jalen Hood-Schifino were neck and neck on our Mockposite board here. And I just think that Jalen has the better scoring upside between the two of them. I do like Anthony Black a little bit better defensively. And I think he might have a step on him playmaking wise, but if so, it's not by very much. And just like the more that I'm watching of both of these guys, Jalen Hushkafino gives me way more vibes that he could be more of a self-creator scoring wise between the two of them. And if this team burns down to the ground and you can only take one of these two guys left, I think that Jalen Hushkafino is the guy for the Lakers.
So JHS is off the board. That's a great pick. That's a LeBron pick. I think LeBron would love playing alongside somebody like him, another really good ball mover, somebody who can play some of those pick and roll actions without LeBron having to be involved. You can throw LeBron in, sort of put him in the short roll with some of those with JHS. You can obviously play him and Anthony Davis in those actions alongside. And if more of the shooting comes around, which we all think that it will, he becomes a viable catch-shoot option next to those guys. I just think with that, with the 6'6" size, with the length, with the defensive upside, that's exactly what the Lakers need. They just need a guy who can do a little bit of everything, which Anthony Black could have done for them as well. But I think I'd rather have JHS, honestly. To be perfectly honest with you guys, I think that's who I would rather go with. Maxwell, we'll see what direction you go with. This is back-to-back picks for the New York Knicks, the first one being via the Wizards, the second one being via the Mavericks. Where are you going for the first of two?
They already drafted Derek Lively earlier.
They already took Lively, so we got the
all three of us are building up the Knicks.
Mm-hmm. So to me, there is like a real clear drop off in talent at this point in the draft. Do you guys agree with that? Okay. I was like, am I missing somebody? Okay, good. Yeah, I'm just not wild about my options here. I would love to just swing for the fences on a guy here, and there's nobody that I'm really dying to swing on. Look, this is another terrible shooting team. This is the 28th ranked team in the league in 3-point percentage right now. I'm not making that any better with this pick. This is a guy who has had a brutal start to the season that I predicted might have a rough start and a rough college season, but a player that I'm still interested in because of the tools. I'm going to take Anthony Black.
Okay.
And I'm going to be real. I don't feel good about this at all. I don't feel good about this, but I think
it's weird.
I think he's the highest ceiling player left. And I think that if you're the New York Knicks, like there's no path to a title that you're on right now. So I think you're rolling dice because I'm not crazy about any of the role player fits for this team. Like I thought about Marcus Sasser for a second, but it's like, I'm not going to play him and Jalen Brunson together as much as I love Marcus Sasser. I'm not taking Khalil Ware and Derek Lively together. I just don't like that fit at all. Amari Bailey is just another I just don't think athletically the idea of him and Brunson next to each other really clicks.
His best case version of himself is another Brunson.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just going to take the really toolsy athlete who I know can defend a couple positions and has the playmaking upside and hope to God he figures out a way to put the ball in the basket, because so far through 2 college games, he has not. But I'm going to roll the dice on size, playmaking, and athleticism.
God, I want to go further down the board and take somebody else.
Do it
for the Knicks. No, I won't go too far down the board. I will, though, however, take the guy who, in theory, Maxwell, I think he has even more upside than Anthony Black. If everything hits for this young man, we have him a little low in our composite rankings as to where everybody else has him around the country, as it seems. Maxwell, you might be the lowest on this guy that I think I've seen, period. But Dylan Mitchell, we're bringing Dylan Mitchell off the board for the New York Knicks. So you laid it out perfectly, Maxwell. This team is not in a position to contend for a title. They got to take swings. You bring in a guy with very high feel like Anthony Black. You bring in a guy like Lively, who with his combination of physical tools, 7'1" size, the athleticism, the ability to run the floor like a guard or a wing, and the shooting upside along with the shot blocking upside. Now you're throwing Dylan Mitchell in there, another hyper athlete who can play alongside both of those guys and provide some interesting utility for a team that needs athleticism, needs defensive upside, another guy who can run the floor, catch those lobs from Jalen Brunson or RJ Barrett. They need somebody like him in the lineup to be able to contribute. And outside of if they did actually get Lively in real life, they don't have another guy on the roster with the same kind of athleticism that Dylan Mitchell would be able to inject into, whether he was coming off the bench whether he found a way into the starting lineup, whatever the case may be, New York could use a fun and exciting player like him. I thought about Jaquavian Smith, but he seems too redundant for what they already have with Emmanuel Quickly, and I think they really like Emmanuel Quickly. I know he was involved in some of the potential trade talks with Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz. I don't think they're going to get off Quickly, so that's why I think this is a safer upside pick for the Knicks. So, Steven, you're at pick 20. You have the Toronto Raptors. You can also go a number of directions. You can go down the board. You can stay where you're at in terms of where these guys are ranked in our composite. Where are you going to go for the Toronto Raptors?
Yeah, it's really interesting because some of the players that are projected to not be here still are, and there are some that I, thought that would be taken, and they're still here. I want to go point guard because, look, Fred VanVleet has a player option. Gary Trent Jr. has a player option. Thad Young might be out the door. Otto Porter could be too. Delano Banton's a restricted free agent. I don't know if there's like a weird market for him and he walks. I want to go point guard. There's two that I'm looking at, and it's not the highest one that I'm looking at on our board either. I think I'm going to go Terquavion Smith here for the Toronto Raptors because one of the things that we know that they need is like shot creation, self-creation, half-court shooting, and Terquavion Smith can give you all of those things. He looks amazing athletically. His playmaking looks like it's taken a step up so far in the early part of this season. Defensively, he kind of gives you some feisty competitiveness, and if not, there's Koloko, there's Barnes, there's OG, there's no shortage of defenders on this team. Give me the hot hand of Terquavion Smith, who looks like he's taking a decent step up in his sophomore season.
An interesting pick. I do agree with the premise that they are running a little dry on point guard depth. With all respect to Malachi Flynn, I love Malachi Flynn coming out of the draft. He doesn't look like he's going to be the team's long-term starter behind if Fred VanVleet would in fact move on. So that being said, regardless of who's the starter or who they need to come off the bench, Terquavion Smith has some of the highest upside in this draft as one of these lethal microwave six-man type of guys who can just come in and hit 6 threes in a row and immediately get your team back into any game that you would need him to. That's
thought
the type
about
of
Sasser.
scorer. Sasser would be another good option.
Yeah.
Certainly if you want to build around backcourt defense, he'd be the better pick between him and Terquavion. But Terquavion could still be too low in this mock exercise. We could come back 2 months from now and he could be as high as 14, 13. He could break into the lottery because of the type of offensive dynamo that he can be in the backcourt. So 20, Terquavion Smith, that feels about right to me. I will not fault the pick, Steven. I think you did a good job laying out what the team needs and going with one of the best solutions for it. Maxwell, Clippers.
Yep.
Pick 21. What are we doing?
Yeah, so the Clippers generally have just taken upside talent. I think it's sort of a misnomer that these teams that are competing are always looking to grab guys that can help them right now, because most of the time rookies don't help. They've been very clever about getting high upside players in the draft and then just dealing them when a deal comes up to get somebody who's good. So I'm going to do the same thing here. They just took a big in the last draft in Moussa Diabate. So Kel'el Ware, I feel like we're lower on than a lot of people. And I just like the idea of what he could be in time. And
why are we lower on him, Maxwell? What do you think our reservation? Because it's not just us three. I think as collective and no ceilings, we might be a little low.
Yeah.
So here's my thing with Kel'el Ware. I liked Kel'el Ware a lot. When we did our piece on incoming freshmen, I wrote about him, and I really liked him as a guy who would be taken in this range. He's who I'm going to take here. I think our reservation with Kel'el Ware is that he is still very thin, which nothing wrong with that. I think that's the lowest one as far as why we're lower on him. That's the smallest reason. The jump shot is still a lot more theoretical than I think people realize. I think people talk about Kel'el Ware like he is a knockdown 3-point shooter, and he's just not that at this stage. Nope. I think defensively he has a lot more lapses. I think people talk about him like, oh yeah, he's like a 3-and-D big, and the defense is so really inconsistent, and okay at his age, but when you look at just the amount of responsibilities that are loaded onto a big in the modern NBA, it's pretty scary when you have a guy that has those kind of lapses and can get lost and
I,
can
I don't even
get
know if
carried
it's
away
just
in paint
that.
and
I
coverage.
think he's legitimately slow getting to where he needs to be in the half court defensively.
He is, like, we talk about guys who are sneaky athletic. He is sneaky slow off the floor because he looks like a guy that should be a pogo stick leaper. And there's times where, like, in the high school film, where like he wouldn't even jump. Like a guy would take a shot in his face and he wouldn't even like get off the floor for it.
When you go at him, he will swat your shot away. If you try to go into his body, he knows what to do with you when he's there. But the problem is, can he get to where he needs to go?
Mm-hmm.
I know that he was just coming back, I believe, from a small injury. He got a few minutes in Oregon's first game. I watched some of that tape. I get that we're going to have to be patient with Kalawera for a little bit. But at the same time, just given what we saw on the preseason tape that we all watched during the summer and what we're starting to see here, yeah, I have the same questions that you guys do. And I'm not sold. I'm not sold that he needs to be a top 20 pick. I think Derek Lively needs to be a top 20 pick. I'm not sure that Kalaware needs to be one, but maybe we change our tune if he does end up being better defensively. Maybe he is a little bit quicker to his spots in the half court. Maybe he is nailing that 3-point shot with regularity. Maybe he does jump up our board to where we're looking back 2 months from now and we're going, why did we only have him outside the top 20 in a mock exercise? But he has to prove that to us. So
his mobility did look better so far in the early part of the season than like what it looked like to me at the high school level. So the mobility concerns look a little like maybe they were a little overreactionary on my part, but there's still like the defensive liability stuff that I still see in him early on. But you know, he can improve on that.
So I'm up for the Atlanta Hawks at 22. This team definitely needs some more wing depth. They started to add to it with AJ Griffin, who, by the way, has played pretty well in spurts for the Atlanta Hawks.
Awesome.
Shout out to AJ Griffin. He's having a lot of fun out there. They need guys who can just shoot off the ball, right? They need guys who can just catch and shoot off of those Trae Young looks. Whoever Trae Young's dancing with in the pick and roll, he needs to find the corner kick out guy. They need somebody who could knock those shots down reliably. I'm going to go Chris Murray here. I'm going to go Chris Murray for the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
I think he's one of those guys. The Hawks have expectations to keep winning basketball games at a high level. I think Chris is a high feel guy. He's going to prove that he can come in and knock down a lot of those shots that they need him to right away. And at the same time, he's not necessarily burning them in any one particular area. He may not be the best defensive player. I still think there's some tools that can be worked out there with him. I think he's going to provide some rebounding toughness. And again, that catch and shoot ability or that ability to hit the line drive off of a hard closeout. I think that's just some of the basic, simple things that the Hawks will ask him to do. And I think that he can do those things well enough for a team that expects to be contending in the playoffs for years to come with an offensive superstar like Trae Young is. So give me Chris Murray to give them a little bit more wing depth. Steven, another fun team you can draft for. The Memphis Grizzlies, who seem like they have a little bit of everything. I'm curious to see what you could throw at them with the 23rd pick.
I'm really hating what I'm doing to a guy that's like still sitting there really nicely on our board, just ready to be taken. But there's another guy at his same position who I mentioned earlier that just feels so freaking Memphis Grizzly that I got to take Marcus Sasser here.
Yep, that's a great pick.
He just total Memphis Grizzly vibes, like F everybody, F the world. Like it's just me and my team. I can shoot. I can defend. My playmaking is getting better. Don't got to worry about the interior scoring concerns. He's going to be playing right behind freaking Ja Morant. He could end up playing next to him in kind of like a DeAnthony Melton mold if he shows that he is like that level of a point of attack defender. Marcus Sasser just screams Memphis Grizzly point guard, and yeah, that's where I'm going.
No, he does. I agree completely. Yes, they have Ja Morant. Yes, they have Tyus Jones. But to be able to add somebody who can play either the 1 or the 2, he can play off either of those guys as well. Yeah. He's a really good catch and shoot guy. He can create his own shots. You can put him in some of the pick and roll actions if he does need to be the third point guard, the only point guard on the floor at a time. And then the defense that you talked about, Steven, it fits perfectly with that grit and grind hustle culture that is the Memphis Grizzlies. Great pick by you, sir. I love that pick.
Thank you, sir.
Maxwell, Indiana Pacers via the Cleveland Cavaliers. There is one guy who I could have taken him for the Hawks when I talked about wing depth. I didn't. I went a different direction, but there's still an upside case to be made with one particular European talent. I'm curious where you're going to go with this pick.
Yeah, so there are two European talents that I actually really considered with this pick. I am going to kind of continue down the path I spoke with about the Pacers earlier, as far as just getting a little bit more long and athletic. So I'm deviating a little bit, and I'm going to take a different European player who was playing in Australia and take Ryan Rupert.
Nice.
Hey,
yep.
I think that you really have to hope that he just becomes a reliable corner 3-point shooter. Because
that's why I didn't take him for Atlanta. I thought about it because of the defense, but
yeah, so that's where he interests me. Indiana's defense is ranked in the bottom half of the league. If you go by defensive rating, I think they're 24th right now. Mathurin, I think, is going to get there as a defender. Halliburton is always going to be a little bit limited athletically. Ideally in the future, maybe they're not counting on Buddy Hield to hold up on defense so much.
Yeah, he is not the three man of the future. Please,
he's not. Yeah, they don't call him Buddy Lockdown Hield. But yeah, I think with Ryan Rupert, you're getting somebody who in time might even be able to play the 4. Like, I think we always overlook, like, what's this guy going to play when he really grows into his body? And when you're talking about a guy like a 7'3" wingspan, like, that's very much on the table for him as he adds size. So you really got to hope he becomes a corner 3-point shooter, but excellent defender. Trust him as a decision maker. The shot percentages, I think, actually look better than I really feel about the shot. I do not trust his pull-up at this point, but he's long, he's athletic, he's smart, knows what he's doing. Fun addition, and just continuing to try and push that ceiling higher for a team that's sort of in a weird stage of an early rebuild.
And Rupert, man, another one of these guys. All of a sudden, we could look back and he's getting top 20 mocks because he's playing that well.
It's a deep class, man.
It is. It's a deep class. And we all kind of said, right? Like when you get to like that 17, 18, 19 year, like there is a talent drop off compared to what we were dealing with in the lottery. But if some of these role players do hit, like NBA teams could be looking back and saying, thankfully, we made this pick late in the first round. So I agree that the talent is still abundant. I'm up, pick number 25 for the Phoenix Suns. When I sat down and I was thinking about what do some of these teams need that I'm going to be picking for tonight, guys, the Suns, they're playing well in the West. They do seem to be one of the West's best teams this year, yet you look up and down their roster, they quietly need a little bit of everything. Like I could make multiple positional arguments based on where they need to add depth. But one glaring area where they do need depth and they need to start thinking about what are we going to look like in the future is point guard. Chris Paul's not going to be there forever. They don't have another answer at that position long-term on the roster. The best bet that I can make long-term with what we have available on the board would be Tyrese Proctor. And that's exactly where I'm going to go. The Duke product, 6'5" guard from Australia. He has some interesting tools to work with in his bag. He's one of the better pick and roll playmakers that I think we do have in this class. He can guard multiple positions in the backcourt on the defensive side of the ball. If the shot doesn't work out, his projection becomes a little murkier, which I think is why we would have him as a late first round grade right now. But if more of the shooting and the scoring upside does pan out, then all of a sudden we look at this high IQ, transition ready, defensive ready guard who can come in and really make an impact for a team in the NBA who, if he's coming in for a contender, would be coming off the bench, get to learn from guards ahead of him like Chris Paul and Devin Booker. That could be a really good spot for somebody like Proctor to come in. So I like that pick a lot at 25. So, Steven, another draft pick for the Pacers. Man, it seems like these last few drafts we've had, like some of these teams getting like 3 first-round picks, and they're making all of these picks, by the way. They're not just trading them or selling them off. Indiana could very well sit there and make multiple first-round picks, certainly 2 in this 20 to 30 range right here. Where are we going with the Indiana Pacers?
We got to go best player available. I mean, if you look at our mock draft, this guy is ranked what 17th on our board and is still sitting there. And when I said interesting when you took Tyrese Proctor is because Amari Bailey's still there. And if I'm the Indiana Pacers, I understand that I got guards for days. But if I can get the best player available in Amari Bailey here and give long-term, backup point guard rotation between Halliburton, if Ben kind of takes over lead ball handling duties, there's some logic in building up that backcourt depth because you have Smith, you have Ajax, we drafted Kluma, we drafted well, we got Rupert, so now I'm just going to take Bailey and fortify that backcourt rotation, especially for the future.
Yeah, Bailey's 17th on our composite board. I'm the lowest on him out of the group. I have him 22nd. I'm not 100% sold that I would need to take Bailey in like the top 20 range right now, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. So I think getting him later in the first round is an excellent get for a team like Indiana, who, again, they have depth. They have depth in multiple positions. They're young, but they also have some interesting veterans still in the mix. They want to win basketball games. Bring in somebody who we think does have high feel and can contribute in a number of ways. So I do like that direction by the Pacers, regardless of if they have Tyrese Halliburton, Andrew Nembhard. Amari Bailey can play off of those guys as well in smaller lineups. So that is a good
take
by
the
them.
TJ McConnell minutes, eventually.
Yeah, TJ McConnell will eventually probably not be on the Indiana Pacers. So I would agree you can slot him in there as well. Maxwell, pick number 27. The Charlotte Hornets are up again via the Denver Nuggets. They got Scoot Henderson. So now they have Scoot Henderson, LaMelo Ball. You have Mark Williams. You have all the other fun young draft picks they had from a few years ago. Bryce McGowan's. Who else can we add to this fun young core for Charlotte?
Yeah, so with Mark Williams being on the team, I know he hasn't seen a lot of action this year, but it makes me feel better about taking this guy. I believe he's the highest guy left. It's Nikola Jurisic, who's playing for Mega right now. Obviously, everyone has picked on the Hornets over here because their defense has been really bad. Their offense is really bad this year too. Yeah. This is just a team that needs everything. And I think if we've got Scoot out there, and then we've also got LaMelo, and we can just add another high-level connector piece. Jurisic has not been a consistent outside shooter over the years, but especially this season through 3 games. Hasn't played a ton yet, so the sample size is small. But this is also a team that has a really low free throw attempt rate, and he's a guy who is willing to attack and get downhill and embrace physicality. So just having another guy on the court besides Scoot that's going to bring that to the table, I think is a good thing. Even if it doesn't all come together, I think there's a nice world where he's just a good complementary player you bring off the bench. Between what he can do as a decision maker and attacker. He knows where to be on defense. He's just a little slow to react at this point. Maybe he gets more athletic with NBA training and that comes around. But yeah, I feel good taking Jurisic here. It never hurts to have big guys with feel.
So I'm on the board for my last pick in this exercise, 28th, Chicago Bulls via the Portland Trailblazers. Guys, I'll be honest. I don't love any of the 3 options that we have left.
I like one of them a lot better than the other 2 for this particular team.
So I don't there's one guy who a guy on our network would love for you to pick for his team.
Oh, I know. But I'm not going to go that direction because I'm not Corey. I'm not the biggest Jaime Jaquez fan.
Mm-hmm.
I was a Julian Strother guy last year.
Okay.
I'm cooling off that bandwagon a little bit, guys. Listen. The Gonzaga Michigan State game. It was played on an air carrier. All right, it was on a ship. I understand it was outdoors. Wasn't the type of conditions we want a basketball game to always be played in. But I haven't seen anything from Julian Strother yet this year to indicate that he will be making strides in the areas I wanted him to improve to be in first round conversation. So therefore, I'm starting to cool on it a little bit. So that leaves Chris Livingston left as the guy who was.
I hate it. I was going.
He was number 30, I believe, on our composite board. I'm going to take him here a few spots ahead of 28, just because I'm going to bet on the upside.
Yep.
I don't really love his game right now either, but in the second half of that game against Howard in particular, I started to see more of it come together. We started to see the athleticism pop a little more. He started to get a little feisty on the glass. We saw some of the interior finishing. If the shot making does come around from the perimeter at some point, he becomes a lot more interesting. It's just that right now he doesn't seem like a guy who's comfortable creating enough of his own offense to really be in a starting lineup on an NBA floor, but as a guy who could play from the bench, who you could bring in small spurts, get him adjusted to the game. I think that would be a good space for him for a Bulls team that won't feel the pressure to play him out of the gate right away. But with Chris Livingston, who knows? Maybe we're looking back 3 months from now, and all of a sudden Livingston is showing more of that on-ball creativity and more of that on-ball polish to where we go, okay, when you put this together along with his athletic tools, maybe we are looking at him more as a top 25 pick than a guy who's in like the 26 to 45 range. So we'll see what happens with Livingston, but I'll take the upside guy at number 28. Steven, I know now you don't like me anymore because I took your guy for the Utah Jazz at number 29, but you do have two, in my opinion, relatively high field guys left to still draft for a team that all of a sudden wants to win basketball games. So where are you going with the Utah Jazz at 29?
I'm going to take the guy who I have the highest grade on and who I think is borderline first-round talent. Was number 31 on my board. The other guy was like 44. So I gotta go Julian Strawther.
Okay.
I know we just took Jet Howard, right? And I know we got Gigi, so we're building like some forward depth here on this team.
You can never have too many wings forwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I've never really bought into the whole 3-and-D thing with Julian Strawther. Yeah. We talked about that pretty extensively on our Returners podcast, where Maxwell and I went pretty hard on his isolation defenses, just kind of like more of a hope than it is an actuality right now. But
when he's not shooting well from the floor, man, it looks ugly out there. It looks bad.
Yeah, he's a ghost, you know, and maybe we have him too high collectively already. But yeah, between the two of them, I'm just gonna go best player available.
Makes sense. So Maxwell, that means you're left with the last guy, Jaime Jaquez.
That's fine.
He's the highest.
Do you have exciting things to say about Jaime Jaquez to pump up the Houston Rockets fan base?
I do. So I watched the UCLA versus Long Beach State game. Partially because I wanted to get early impressions on Bona and Bailey. I wanted to see no stone unturned prospect Jadon Jones, who hit a couple threes, played some good defense. Played some really good defense on Amari Bailey, actually. But I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Jaime, and I've bothered Stephen about Jaime for like a year. Like when we first started talking, I was like, why don't you like Jaime Jaquez more? Like I've always been a Jaime guy. I completely understand reservations about Jaime Jaquez. He is a hustle player, and hustle is his skill. Like if you want to talk about like what is his major skill, it's that he tries really hard. And effort is a skill, but that can be scary when you're drafting players to the NBA draft. I do think his just technique across the board on both ends of the floor is wonderful. He is a much better mismatch threat than people realize because he can do so much with the ball. He has so many counters, and he is very strong. Defensively, it might get a little bit dicey once he's playing against better athletes, but I was very impressed with how well he moved in that first game against Long Beach State. I was really blown away. This is a guy who had severe ankle issues last season, and he just looked so much better, just gliding, moving side to side, jumping. It's really clear in hindsight how hobbled he was with those ankle injuries last season. He's taken 4 threes. He's hit 2 of them. Look, whether or not he hits shots, that's going to determine where Jaime Jaquez goes. The rest of his game, it's a pretty known commodity. He's going to try on defense. The effort will be there. He's smart. He knows how to put it on the floor. He's just got to hit shots, and I think he's going to. I don't think he's going to hit 50% like he has on his whopping 4 attempts so far this season, but I think it's going to be in the mid to high 30s. And with that, I can live with him as a first round pick. For the Rockets, it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but he's the last guy in the player pool, and if that's who you're taking, I think you can live with it.
No, I agree with your thinking 100%. I think the Rockets would love to add another high field guy, high effort guy to their front court depth, and Jaime Jaquez would give them just that. So, guys, we did it. That's a full first round mock draft 1.0, Mockposite 1.0 from the Draft Deeper crew. I love what we did here, and I think that this will all change completely a month from now, but that's just the nature of the beast with the college basketball season, with more international play ramping up, with the G League Ignite team showing some stuff, winning some games, looking good doing so. We'll see what still happens with Scoot Henderson. We'll see if more of those Ignite guys pop up in our future mock drafts. Mojave King, anyone? Man, I still love that guy, but that's for another podcast at another time. So thank you all again for listening to this episode of the Draft Deeper podcast on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. If you haven't followed me personally already, make sure you go do so at Draft Deeper on Twitter. I have another edition of my morning dunk coming out the same day that you're listening to this mock draft podcast. So be sure to read all of my collective thoughts. I did a full Champions Classic preview. I have some writing in there about the Pepperdine boys that I was really excited to publish. Those guys are coming into the first round conversation in my personal big board / ranking system. And I have some thoughts and observations about other prospects from the first week of college basketball as well. Maxwell, tell the audience where they can find you. And I guess you can also refer, even though I kind of already did for you earlier on, to what you're working on next.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is at Baumboards, BAUM, then the word boards. This week we've got Gigi's Big Adventure, the grand release of Gigi's Big Adventure. I'm very excited about it. But also a ton of other stuff, expanding big board, a lot of quick hits this week because I have watched so much basketball and drinking so much coffee that my stomach is just a pit of hell right now. It is awful. I feel terrible. I'm exhausted, but I have had so much fun this past week. So a lot of quick hits, a lot of fun mid-major stuff, just covering a whole bunch of stuff. So make sure you check out that column.
And Steven, where can everybody find you? And actually, you can just tell the audience, what did you write on the same day that we're recording this podcast?
Yeah, so by the time that everyone's listening to this, it will already have been out. It's called If You Don't Know Me By Now. It's going to be featuring Malik Renault of the Indiana Hoosiers. And just real quick, can clear this up now. It might be Renew. I'm hearing two different pronunciations of his last name
the game too, and I was like, that can't be right.
For everyone out there listening to this episode of the podcast, if we have butchered any pronunciations on this episode, forgive us. We're all still learning these names as much as every other draft analyst out there. You're going to hear mispronunciations on these guys' names, some of them up until like April. Like it's just going to happen. So we apologize.
Even on TV, so give us a break.
Exactly. Yeah, so literally TV and that analyst, exactly.
Yeah, so that piece is out there. It's also kind of talking about some like what we do every time college basketball starts up and how we usually end up feeling about basketball towards the end of the year. And also I threw out some Weekend Warrior awards, one for some of the major conferences out there. So go give that a read. And you're listening to Draft Deeper today on a Monday. Tune in tomorrow where I will be on Home and Away with Nick Agard-Johnson, where we're going to be talking about latest piece and on Malik Renault, and then my prior week's piece on Harrison Ingram. So it's going to be a good time. Tune into that. Me and Nick, it's always fun when we link up. So I'm looking forward to being on that show too.
Man, we are popping off on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed this week. We have Draft Deeper on Monday. Steven's going to be on with Nick on Tuesday. I'm going to be on Nick's show on Wednesday. My first rookie ladder is going to be coming out this week. I can't wait to talk about some of the fun NBA young guys. Excited for that one. So Draft Deeper, as I say for No Ceilings all the time, Draft Deeper is everywhere this week. So make sure you're tuned in, you're locked in. And if you aren't subscribed to the No Ceilings Substack, where you can find all of these wonderful written pieces we are talking about, NoCeilingsNBA.com. Make sure you're subscribed, locked into that email newsletter. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at NoCeilingsNBA. Find us on other social media platforms as well: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, No Ceilings NBA. Come find us, come interact with us. No matter where we are, we want to hear from you guys. We have fun talking about the draft. If we didn't talk about it with our audience, who would we be as media draft analysts? So come hang out with us. And one more reminder, Tuesday night, playback, Champions Classic will be on both games. Come hang out, come scout with us live. We are excited to do more of those as the year goes on. But until we meet again on this podcast feed, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.